You're listening to Both Sides Now on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. I'm Bernadine Fox.
And I'm co-host Don Wright.
And we are lucky to have an artist here called Chrissy Cheung. And she's a curator based in Vancouver. She has a BFA from Concordia, and her work has been appreciated all over the place. But she has curated a show called... what is it called? Is it called Invisible?
Yes, it is.
It isn't called Invisible. That is currently up in Edmonton, but it has a version of it has been in Miami, and it's an exhibition that explores mental health awareness. And so I brought Chrissy here to talk a little bit about her show and her group. She has a group called Painter8. So what is Painter8? Let's start there.
So Painter8 started in basically 2013. I became a mom, and I was staying home a lot, and I couldn't have a studio anymore. So I moved the studio to my basement so I could, in a way, be a mom and then run downstairs and paint sometimes. But then I missed out on the community and just running into artists, and then basically I wasn't going to shows, so I was never talking about art, and I didn't have an adult conversation with my kid. So so I decided, just through email, that I would just invite artist friends that I liked and sort of just had more of a dialogue. And it was very casual. It was, whenever someone finished painting, they would show it, or an in progress, or someone had difficulty, or how do you make that dry faster? Mm-hmm. And then random, interests in music, theater, books, right. And how that philosophy came in. And some people were really into long books, and some people were like, give me the short version. Mm-hmm. And then we started actually reading this book called Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And I don't know if you know that writer, but he had a big episode of depression. Mm. And okay, so let's just fast forward a bit. 4 years later, one of the artists said, Chrissy, we've been talking a long time, maybe we should all have a show together. Mm-hmm. And said that I should curate. And I've never curated before. Mm-hmm. And as I had moved to Montreal, everyone was moving different places.
Right.
And so it became a little bit of a cross-Canada group.
Right.
And people are still moving around. And then I moved to Vancouver.
Right.
So it was sort of, at the time, there was 8 of us. And so we were painters. So it was just very forward Painter8. Mm-hmm.
So that's how Painter8 came about. So, artists tackle all kinds of subject matters, and, everything from the sublime to the complicated, and from abstract to hyperrealism. You created an exhibition on mental health. Where did that come from?
So while we were discussing what kind of show we should have, we all have had our own shows, and so we wanted it to be more public, and, there's a lot of us involved, so we kind of more people, the bigger impact, and let's do something meaningful, And we came up with this mental health theme, and, actually some of us were kind of apprehensive because, that's a big subject. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? And, we wanted to kind of, I wanted them to dig deep, and some of them were maybe I'll just do the light one, anxiety. But so, meanwhile, I'm pretty used to writing these, grand proposals, to get into artist-run centers.
Right.
So you kind of have to have a better description before we pitch it.
Right.
So I made one, and I put it on our website. I'm also kind of the web designer for it. And
so you're everything. You're the organizer and the curator and the webmaster.
They all. Some of them have graphic capability, but I have a server, so why not?
So what topics did you tackle?
So we tackled anxiety, depression, because within the group, half of them had one, so they sort of ended up going to something they knew more, Craig had affectio schizo disorder.
Schizoaffective disorder.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And then bipolar disorder was addressed, and we just hung loose with psychosis, as it can go various directions.
Right.
But when we anxiety and depression became a more major theme because we all experienced it. When someone sort of actually noticed one of the artists in New York, his name at the time, he was part of our group, Gavin Sewell. This Miami dealer jumped onto our site because he was part of us.
Right.
And so saw this proposal that I had written for everybody and anybody. And she called us.
Cool.
And she invited us to Miami.
That's very cool. To
do this big show. And, you know, shipping, you know, crossing the border, you know, flying.
That's a big show.
That's a big show, yeah.
Yes.
And it was her inaugural show at Mod Art Gallery.
Wow.
And we called it Whisper. That was our original pitch because, well, it's a very eloquent title. And it went really well. And then you know, remember, I'm still doing this pitch in Canada.
Right.
It's just way slower.
Right.
And so we got to Edmonton.
Right.
But because, you know, that artwork went there, it's the same theme, but we decided to change the title for Edmonton, Galerie Cité, and it was called Invisible because mental health illness is often invisible.
Yes.
But it was the same subject matter, but actually this is our second time. So actually now we're better. I would say because we have the gist, and well, actually I was completely new at curating, and to jump all the way to Miami first was
that's incredible
a big
that
deal.
You managed to pull that off. Way to go.
Thanks. So, you know, shipping in Canada is easy.
Yes, yes it is.
And that was received well too. I called the mayor. And he gave us a message, and I'm giving you that. And
that's Mayor Don Evison?
Yes.
He's the mayor of Edmonton?
Yes. And it was nice. He wrote a message for our show, and I think it gave a lot of you know, interest. And I was at the opening, and so it's a 2-floor center in La Cite Francophone, which is the French cultural center of Edmonton. And within the walls, they call it Galerie Cité. So it's very public. It's open 7 days a week. And we have 42 artworks there by 8 artists across Canada, and from Montreal to Vancouver. And yeah, and everybody's style is different, and that's what I like about the group, that not everyone had to be like an impressionist.
Right.
So there's from abstraction to conceptualism to hyperrealism to regular figurative, and then we have a textile artist from Toronto, Kai Chan. He's the guest artist. And all types of in between, because there was some drawing elements too. I like to show a little bit of concept so that it wasn't just painting. It was like
no, it crossed. I looked at the catalog. There was a wide range of mediums and types and all kinds of stuff. So it was great. So you have done a couple pieces here that I'm going to put up on the web. One is called Lurking and one is called Low Tide. Those are your pieces. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about these, like Lurking? What was that one about?
So they're kind of like a diptych. I often work in Paris, and this one was particularly about bipolar disorder, or it used to be called manic depression.
Right.
And because it refers directly to the highs and the lows.
Yes.
And which, in a figurative, abstract sense, are not actually bad things.
No.
Because, like, when you're low, you isolate yourself, and you kind of maybe get a sense of clarity, and that's the blue one.
This is this one here?
This one here.
Okay.
But there's a lot maybe going on in your mind, and a lot of, like, I call it roughage, and just not turmoil, just like exactly what that picture is. You're just clouded in a way.
The picture, maybe Don can help me describe it. The picture really is blues and yellows, and there's a lot of movement. It's an abstract piece. In a lot of different sort of almost individual areas in the piece itself. So
right, some areas are quite open, some are quite cluttered.
Right.
So I think the composition of the painting is one thing, but also the colors. Like, what does blue mean to you? What does red mean to you? What emotional range do those colors represent?
I'm glad you picked up on that, because I'm a little bit of a colorist, and I subscribe to Goethe's theory that yellow and blue were the primaries, because when you make yellow and blue, they become green, and the after image becomes magenta. So he kind of took out red. And so if I'm just dealing with the primary, yellow and blue, it becomes a kind of a pure, like, you're back to the basics. It means I'm just dealing with, like, light and form. And so I felt that when you're low, you just got the basics. You're not dealing with the social life. You're just kind of retracting, and I would call it an alone time.
And so the lurking was meant to represent the highs.
The highs are dramatic because there's a darkness to it, because there's more daringness. There's like maybe some anger and angst, but it's also a strange excitement. If you would have to take out the word mania. And it's reacting higher in the top area.
So in the orange area, so people can't see this, of course, because it's on the radio, so it's a painting that is also abstract and is basically use of colors and spaces, but there's orange on the top and there's a greenish and blues on the bottom. Well, sort of all mixed up, but yeah.
I would say it has the same intensity, but because of the colors, it's deeper and stronger. It has more force. They're like exactly the same size, so when you see them together, they have quite a push-pull effect.
Right.
It's like
which is kind of what bipolar is. It's kind of a push-pull, definitely.
And I think reds and that tonal range represent more of a passionate, whether it be love or anger, but that kind of intense passionality, whereas the blues are more calm and serene.
Yeah, so I basically just wanted to depict the feeling, and I think colors depict that very well. And without knowing about the disorder, you can kind of feel it maybe if you just stood in front of the painting.
So how long is your exhibition up for?
So it is on until February 29th in Edmonton.
And it's at the Galerie Cité?
Yes.
And if people want more information, where should they go?
So it's if you just type in Galerie Cité Edmonton, it will come up. But we also link on our website, www.painter8.ca.
Okay.
And all the information is there. Basically, I believe Monday to Friday, it's open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturdays 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Sundays 9 to 5.
Okay, and you still have this proposal out there. You're still looking for more spaces to move this exhibition to. Am I correct in that?
Well, we actually have a location in Vancouver called, you must know, Interurban Gallery.
Yes.
What we lack is the funding to ship artwork, and this digital catalog we made, we wanted to make in print so it can be distributed and talked about more. Just digital is great for the environment, but sometimes you need to have it in places.
Right, absolutely. It's one thing to see something in a picture. It's a whole other thing to stand in front of it and take it in. So, yeah.
So we have applied to the Vancouver Cultural Grant, and it just, you just never know. So I think it's an important message, and I'm really happy it got picked up in Miami and in Edmonton. For me, that's like a projection that is fulfilled.
I know from the work how powerful art therapy is. Do you have art therapists affiliated in any way?
No, I didn't know how to meet any, but we had tried to do research by talking with mental health professionals in the field, and we got some great insight because the Miami show had even subject matter borderline personality, and there's just kind of a lot of mental illnesses that not an average person knows, and you have to dig a little deeper and find more. But I actually almost studied that, but it's hard to get in.
Art therapy.
I almost went into art therapy as well, but it wasn't a master's granting program, so I figured I would go the counseling route. But I use art therapy with my clients, have done. And the agency almost always has an art therapist on staff. And for a lot of people who can't articulate their experiences, art is a really good way for them to get it out there. And once it's on paper, it's easier for them to talk about it.
I'm sorry, we have to wrap this up, but we'll pick that up again, I'm sure. definitely. So thank you, Chrissy, for coming in, and I wish you luck in your exhibition, and we'll look forward to having it come here at Interurban. So let us know when that's happening, and we'll put it up on our website as well.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.